On episode 63, we're talking about how the S-curve affects your marketing. Hey everybody, what's up and welcome to the 88 Show. This is the internet's only dental show where we are answering marketing's most important questions because that is what we do. Man, that music on the intro, right? DJ KoKo, every time I hear it, man, I play it in my car. Just a good song. Thanks so much for letting us use it. Jay Moore at the end, man, we gotta hook that up, put his Instagram handle on here. Check him out down below in the show notes. But hey, this is episode number 63. I am your host, Joshua Scott. Thanks so much for being here. What's going on this week? Warm Midwestern week. I think it's actually that way across the country. So the high today is 64 and it is February 20th. Which is crazy. So I know many of you were enjoying the weather over the weekend. And also very significantly on this Monday, actually it's not this Monday, but Friday, I turned 40. So this week, I was just telling the crew, begins the march to 40. I think actually the march started a long time ago, but this week feels significant for whatever reason. So getting closer and closer to 40. I hear there's a big party Friday night, so I'm looking forward to that, having some fun and just embracing it, right? 40 is not, you got to embrace it, got to go with it. I'm not dreading it, loving it. And so that's that. So episode 63, what we're talking about this month, our topic is jump, and we're kind of bringing some math into marketing and looking at sigmoid curves and logistical functions and all that stuff. So if you missed last week's episode, go back because we actually set that up and we talk about sigmoid curves and what that means and going into it. And so this week, what I want to stop and get into is how that affects marketing. And so what does a mathematical expression, a logistics function have to do with marketing and how that affects it? Because I think you might be surprised and hopefully it sheds some light on some of the things happening in your practice, maybe some of the things that have happened in the past, and ultimately set you up for success in the future. And so let's get into, before we get into some questions, because we're going to go over there and draw, let me get into three reasons or three ways the sigmoid curve affects marketing. You know, I think as we're looking at the first thing that I see is just the evaluation process. I think as we're looking at our marketing, there are certain points where evaluation is really good. And so right now we're at the beginning of 2017. I think asking questions, evaluating last year's marketing, right? You know, did it meet your expectations? Did it do what it was supposed to do? For what you invested, did you get the return that you were expecting? What was maybe the favorite part of your marketing last year? What was the least favorite? You know, questions like those, because the S-curve is all about evaluating where are things slowing down? Where are things speeding up and gaining momentum? And so knowing where these pieces are on that curve, whether it's gaining momentum and it's growing, or whether it's starting to slow down, maybe plateauing, maybe you've got some things that are even in decline, but stopping to evaluate where things are currently, are we happy with it? And then be able to predict and plan where it's going to go. Okay, so that's number one, is evaluate. Number two is knowing the difference between a big S and a little s. And this is something I just made up. It's not really technical or factual, but I think when we're looking at S curves, there are times where we need a big S. Like we just need to jump. We need something radically different. You know, maybe you've never marketed much before. I mean, you've got a little website, not much of a marketing budget. I talk to practices like this all the time. So the big S is, we just need to jump in. We need to jump in and get involved in some marketing. Maybe you've kind of been sitting at the bottom of the high dive and watching everybody climb up the digital marketing ladder, the digital marketing high dive, and you've been watching them just climb up and jump off. And I'm like, man, it's time for a big S. We just need to jump into digital. You need to climb up that high dive, take somebody out there with you, and just let them push you off the edge and go for it. So we need a big S. Other times, man, it's just probably just little, small S's, little changes. We don't need to change anything dramatic because as we looked at the marketing last year, it was it was functioning, it was effective. There were so many parts of it that were good. But what are the little things we need to change? What are the little things we need to tweak to keep momentum going? And maybe our AdWords need adjusted. Maybe Facebook, we just need to refresh it with some new images. What are those? Maybe there's just some other spaces we need to get involved into. And so knowing the difference between big S's and little S's, the types of change we need to make is another key of the S curve in marketing. And then last, number 3, and this comes right off of the second point, is experimentation. Experimentation. Am I saying that right? Experimentation? Experimentation.
You were right.
Experimentation. It sounds like spearmint or experimentation. Point number 3 is Point number 3 is experimenting, having a portion of your budget to experiment with. And I think this all comes back to, it's really rooted in this S-curve philosophy, because if you have that as part of your budget, then it keeps it from getting slowed down, from just getting mundane and routine, and it brings a little bit of freshness in every year. And so as we work with clients long-term, maybe not in the first year or 2, but as we start to work in year 3 and 4, I want to set aside part of that budget to just experiment with, to get into new spaces. I mean, last year had a lot of practices jumping into Instagram. Some of them really liked it and it really fit with their brand approach. Some of them didn't see the return on it, and so they got out of it. Maybe getting involved with Yelp or some Bing ads, or just things like that that are a little bit like, let's just test this. Let's set aside a portion of the budget, see where it goes, see if we like it, see if we don't. But in the end, it's a change, and it's bringing freshness and life and momentum to your marketing, and that's the whole point of it. And so those are the 3 ways that I see the S-curve really affecting marketing. Hey guys, what's up? In the middle of filming episode 63. I got Jay Moore here behind me. I would show you, but I'd have to turn the camera. So we're talking about S-curve still. The featured article of the month is Jump, and how that mathematically affects our marketing and business decisions. So got a few questions here we're going to answer and go from there. So
we don't have a lot of money for a marketing budget. What can we do that doesn't cost a lot?
So this is a really great question, because when we're talking about budgets and you say, I don't have much money for a marketing budget, what are my options? And so if we're thinking about the S-curve and how that works, so we got an S-curve like that. Look, something has to power the curve. Something's got to like propel it or force it. There's got to be some force happening behind it. And so it can be a number of different things. Money is one of those, for sure. If you've got a budget behind your marketing, that is a force, that is something that's propelling it. So that will definitely send it along its way on the curve. Also is just word of mouth. Having an amazing patient experience will give you momentum and force, and that will put that S-curve into play as well. The other one is just straight up hustle. It's just hustle marketing. I mean, it's like doing whatever it takes to get out, to create PR and relationships and networking and get patients in. And so when you say, I don't have much money for a marketing budget, what are my options? I'm like, that's fine. So we're going to take money out of it. You still got word of mouth. You still got hustle. I mean, you have the ability to get out. And I see this a lot in startups, just because the budget's smaller and we can do some stuff there, but the lead doctor or the marketing director or somebody just getting out and making it happen. I mean, just bootstrap and go. And so that combined with your patient experience better be amazing. I mean, it just better be off the charts. Get patients talking, use that as some force and some momentum. And I think you're fine. You don't have to have money to do marketing. In the end, I actually probably see a lot of practices start to get a big marketing budget that's driving this and it's forcing that, propelling it. But man, the word of mouth and the patient experience can get weak. And a lot of times just nobody has time to hustle anymore. So, get out, do those things, and I think we can make it happen.
Our direct mail campaigns have been declining over the past few years. What can we do to get the most return from this investment?
All right, so question number 2, we're talking about direct mail, and you're saying, you've done direct mail for a while. We've worked with quite a few practices like this because what happens is it starts to decline, and then maybe they reach out to us and say, hey, we're just not seeing the results that we used to get from direct mail, so what can we do? So part of that with direct mail, this is awesome. I mean, this perfect illustration of the S-curve is where are we at on this curve with direct mail? And so part of it, sorry, dropping markers. Direct mail used to work, probably had a moment where it was very profitable. You were putting X amount in, getting so many new patients. You thought it was working, it was generating revenue. So, we've definitely have had this part of the S curve with direct mail. And whether that was like mid 90s, late 90s, even around the beginning of the 2000s, we saw direct mail working. Here's my problem with it is I think we're somewhere over here now. And so when you ask the question, like, how do I tweak it to kind of get back to this? I don't know that we will. I think we've passed the plateau and we're into the decline of direct mail. And so a lot of times when I'm talking with practices and I'm saying, look, the solution isn't to tweak. The solution isn't to adjust or more money or do these things to try to get back to here. Direct mail has passed its prime. And so what's necessary is we jump and start a new curve. It's a hard jump. This is climbing up the high dive, getting out on the edge of that board and just jumping. And it's probably a jump into digital. And so if that's what you're looking at, man, jump off the high dive and just go for it.
How long do you recommend running a Facebook ad?
Really good question. You're probably in it already, so you've made the jump into digital. You're running some Facebook ads. Listen, Facebook, it's one of these things where how do we keep this fresh? And so, before on the show earlier, we were talking about big S's versus little S's, right? So getting into Facebook, for some of you, might have been a big S curve. Like that might have been your launch into digital. That might have been the first time you began to mess with social media ads. And so that was kind of a big S, right? I mean, that was a big jump into it. But what we can't do, what we've seen with data and from our end, what we can't do is launch Facebook ads and then just leave them alone for an entire year. There is a very real, almost like short cycle, sales cycle with these ads. And so what happens then is they need to be refreshed more and more constantly. And so on this S curve of Facebook marketing, what we have is a bunch of little S's. The little changes we were talking about earlier, to where it's almost like as we're going along the way, we are refreshing those ads. They need a little bit of a change. They need new images, new content to just keep them fresh, to keep this cycle going. And so if we were to kind of blow this out and look at it, you would, if you could like zoom into this big S curve, you would almost see a bunch of little S's along the way. And I hope that makes sense, but it's really that concept of the little changes within the big changes, keep this thing moving and propelling. And I think I see that more in Facebook than any place else. So from my advice, I think you could run an ad for a month. I think some of this depends on your market, your demographic, your competitiveness in the area, but you could probably run an image and kind of a set ad for a month, but then, man, I would switch it up. And so a real easy strategy is get 6 different ads, 6 different images, and schedule those for 1 month at a time. That gives you 6 months, and then maybe just go back through the whole thing and repeat it another 6 months. And so now we've got a year strategy. For those of you who want to stay even edgier and more competitive, probably every 2 weeks, switch it up and get a whole year's worth of content. I mean, that's going to be like 24, 26 different ads. And so Facebook definitely needs that. I think we see that more with the little S's, refreshing it and keep it going. Hey guys, thanks so much for being here. That wraps up episode 63. Hope you've enjoyed this last month's worth of topics. I love S-curve stuff. I kind of geek out on it a little bit, but I think whether it's marketing or business or life, there's really so many applications there. And so I hope some of this has been helpful to you. Question of the show: what are you going to experiment with this year? What's your experimentation budget? What are you going to do? What are the little S curves that are going to happen this year? What do you have planned? I'd love to hear those. Leave them down in the comments below. Also, if you haven't read this month's article, Jump, you can find the link down below for that as well. Would love to hear your thoughts on that. Also excited about next month, just giving you a little heads up. For March, the topic is going to be Mars. Mars, colonizing Mars, actually. So that's going down on the 88 show next month. You'll have to kind of stay tuned to figure out how that relates to marketing, because I'm going to bring it back there. I mean, I am. We're going to go colonizing Mars, and we're going to bring it right back to marketing a dental practice. So you guys stick around to see that happening. And then last but not least, if love for you to follow me, best place to get a hold of me and keep up is on Instagram at Joshua Scott. Jay Moore's going to put that right down here, little space at Joshua Scott. Hit me up there. We'd love to hear from you. Guys, I think that's it. Thanks so much for being here. I'll see you next time.